Bilocation is a movie that lies to you, and its lies begin even before you press play. You see, Bilocation is not a horror film. I have no idea whose decision it was to market the movie this way, but it was a huge mistake. Those who come expecting scares will leave disappointed, while the audience that could truly appreciate its depth might skip it entirely because of the misleading horror label. However, the film's synopsis can be trusted. Shinobu Takamura, a young aspiring artist, finds herself accused of a crime she never committed. Soon it becomes clear she's not the only victim. There is a whole group of people united by one problem: bilocation. According to Wikipedia, bilocation is the act of being in two places simultaneously. But in the context of this film, bilocation is simply another term for a doppelganger. Before we dive into the movie's themes and ideas, a fair warning. Bilocation is an incredibly spoiler-sensitive picture. So do yourself a favor, watch the movie first, then come back to this video if you're still curious. Now, assuming we're all on the same page, let's explore how bilocation deconstructs the phenomenon of the double from various perspectives, and why doppelganger horror is no longer just a work of fiction. In most narratives, doppelgangers are portrayed as malevolent, aggressive entities, hell-bent on dismantling the protagonist's life. This trope is as old as time. Encountering a double represents confronting one's own opposite, the so-called Jungian shadow, which embodies all the qualities a person rejects in themselves. However, the lore of this film works a bit differently. Bilocations manifest during moments of intense conflicting need. This shift in perspective provides far richer territory for exploring character psychology. Still, the story does not entirely abandon the classic evil double. We see this trope play out through the character of Detective Takashi Kano. The man is devoted and responsible toward his work. Yet harsh working conditions and humiliation from his superiors trigger uncontrollable aggression in him. This is how his bilocation is born, an erratic, toxic shell of a man who makes life a living hell for everyone around him. While there isn't much to discuss regarding this character, his arc serves as a perfect case study for the destructive nature of suppressed aggression. The double lashes out at everyone indiscriminately, tarnishing the original's reputation. What's interesting is that it attacks others and itself with equal fervor. Any physical damage inflicted on the original is mirrored perfectly on the bilocation, yet it does not slow it down one bit. Outward aggression is at its core aggression directed inward. Aggressive people, like wounded animals, snap at others because they are drowning in their own pain. People with unrealistically high standards and zero self-compassion can exhaust themselves to the point where they lose all empathy for others, eventually crossing boundaries and causing harm. So the next time someone close to you becomes unexpectedly aggressive during a conflict, be sure you've struck a very raw, painful nerve. For a bilocation consumed by malice and incapable of communication, the end is inevitable. A personality devoured by anger seeks only to destroy until it finally destroys itself. Many people assume that Jungian shadow is something bad, evil, or nasty, but that's not entirely true. The shadow encompasses any repressed feelings, thoughts, or emotions, and sometimes, for whatever reason, we cannot accept the positive parts of ourselves either. This nuanced duality is perfectly illustrated by Mayumi Kadakura, a young mother chained to the bedside of her severely ill son while her bilocation tries to snatch the child from the hospital. However, things are not as straightforward as they seem. Motherhood is a monumental work under any circumstances, but being the mother of a disabled child is a Herculean effort. In the moments of weakness, thoughts creep in that we are too ashamed to even admit to ourselves. That's what happened to Mayumi. In a moment of utter exhaustion, one part of her wished for the ideal to finally end, while another part desperately wanted to save the boy. This internal conflict gave birth to her bilocation, a double that wants nothing but to protect the child. According to the film's lore, bilocations are unaware that they are mere duplicates. They perceive themselves as autonomous individuals with their own agency. When the truth is finally revealed, it hits the woman like a physical blow. However, she doesn't have time to process what to do with this revelation. Her original finds her first. The film opens with a scene in which a young girl reads an excerpt from Genesis about Cain and Abel. This scene serves two purposes. First, it demonstrates how a bilocation comes into being, and second, it foreshadows the protagonist's internal conflict. In the biblical tale, the elder brother Cain and the younger Abel both offer gifts to God. Abel's offerings are accepted while Cain's are rejected. In a fit of unbridled envy, one brother kills the other. At first glance, what could this possibly have to do with the movie? Well, let's take a closer look. A young artist named Kirimura is living under immense pressure. She is convinced that if her work is not recognized at the local competition, her entire existence as an artist will be meaningless. She has to win no matter what. At the peak of this emotional tension, her doorbell rings. Too overwhelmed to answer, she allows herself a fleeting thought, just for a second, that she could live a simple life, one where she doesn't pour her entire being into her craft. In that split second of desire for escape, her double is born, and their fates diverge completely. While Kirimura grinds herself down day after day, Takamura finds love, dedicates herself to domestic life, and paints purely for pleasure. Unlike other bilocations in the film, these two don't initially clash. They live separate lives that intersect only at one pivotal moment. At the competition Kirimura has been working so hard for, the grand prize goes to Takamura, the one for whom painting was merely a hobby. The scene where Kirimura stands in the shadows, watching her double bask in the spotlight and accept the award that should have been hers, is one of the most visceral cinematic experiences I have ever had. The paintings created by these two women capture the exact same scene, the view from the studio window, yet their execution could not be more different. Kirimura's work, born from sacrifice and exhaustion, is cold and rigid, technically flawless yet utterly inhuman. Takamura's work, by contrast, is vibrant, radiating warmth and life. Her brushstrokes were guided by the love and support of her husband. This is a perfect illustration of the concept of nonlinear growth, which I touched upon in my video on 3 Days of Happiness. It wasn't long hours of practice that made her a recognized artist, but a simple life filled with love. However, this scene reflects something far more profound, a midlife crisis. Have you ever wondered why seemingly successful, high-achieving people, those who appear to have it all, suddenly spiral into depression, succumb to substance abuse, or even choose to end their lives? This is exactly why. If previous bilocations embodied the shadow, Shinobu's case presents something closer to the persona. In Jungian terms, if the shadow represents what we hide from the world, the persona is part of our psyche that we present to it. It's a social mask, a carefully curated facade of our virtues. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. The problem arises when an imbalance occurs. When a person begins to live their life solely to serve the persona instead of their true self. On the surface, everything looks perfect. Thriving career, beautiful family, financial security. Yet they cannot find satisfaction because these achievements were the persona's desires. The true self might actually yearn to wander the mountains of Tibet instead of driving children to school. Unfortunately, this realization often comes too late. Meanwhile, one's entire life and environment are aligned with the persona, and when a person's true self begins to emerge, people around them start resisting this unfamiliar behavior, which leads to conflicts. We all want to be loved for who we truly are, not just when we're playing the right roles. However, a system built around the persona rejects anything that does not fit the mold, making return to the self a destructive and painful process. Now, if we examine this scene through the lens of two components of a single psyche, the conflict becomes painfully clear. Kirimura watches as her other half, Takamura, receives the long-awaited award. Kagami asks her, "Why are you crying? That's you on that stage." But Kirimura cannot claim the victory, because it isn't her win, a different, more proper painting one. It's almost like hers, yet different. And if you weren't chosen, you were rejected. This is the exact conflict unfolding within someone experiencing a midlife crisis. The unbearable pain of realizing you have spent your entire life being the wrong person, pursuing the wrong things, and no amount of success can compensate for that lost time. Takamura offers to give Kirimura everything she has and simply disappear, but Kirimura cannot accept this, because it's not hers. It was never meant for her. Let's circle back to the biblical opening and trace the parallels. Cain represents Kirimura, she was here first. Abel represents Takamura, the bilocation that appeared later. God accepts Abel's offerings but rejects Cain's. Similarly, in the film, Takamura's work is recognized by the world, while Kirimura's is dismissed. It's this rejection, whether by God or by the world, that causes unbearable anguish. And when there's such a wound, blood will inevitably be shed. But while biblical Cain murders his brother, Kirimura chooses to end everything herself. But is this truly the only path? Must everything inevitably end in fatal confrontation with no peaceful solution in sight? There is one, and the film shows it too. A young student and his bilocation are initially hostile towards each other. However, sharing a common goal allows them to cooperate and ultimately achieve it successfully. Translating this into psychological terms, the winning strategy is reconciliation and integration, bringing all parts of the psyche into collaboration toward a common purpose. Every component of our psyche pursues its own goal, yet none of them are wrong or disposable. Only by skillfully harnessing all available psychological resources can we successfully reach our goals without collateral damage of self-destruction or harming those around us. Imagine this. On a Saturday morning, you are abruptly awakened to find your phone buzzing with notifications. Your friends are all messaging you at once, demanding explanations for what the hell is going on. Confused, you ask, "What exactly is happening?" In response, they send you photos and videos of yourself wearing provocative clothes, in compromising positions, caught in the middle of some socially reprehensible act. It's your face, your voice, your mannerisms. You know for a fact you never did any of this. But how do you prove that you didn't do something? Every single day, countless people fall victim to scammers and become targets of online harassment. A single video can be enough to destroy someone's life. If you're lucky, your psyche might withstand such blows. But for many, these attacks are fatal to their reputation, careers, mental health, and sometimes even their lives. Cases of identity theft are nothing new. For years, scammers have exploited innocent people's photos and profiles for their own gain. However, with AI and deepfake technology spreading like wildfire, the game has changed completely. It is now not only possible to steal another person's identity, but also to perform actions on their behalf and create defamatory materials with terrifying ease. I don't believe there are any real measures that can protect you from this kind of threat. Just remember that everything you have ever posted online can and will be used against you. With a heavy heart, I must conclude that doppelganger horror is now closer to reality than fiction.